Alex, first of all, the kind of the obvious one. What happened that you did not weren't able to move any of the guys that we thought you might do?
Yeah, no, I know there was a ton of speculation on, obviously I read it, I saw all of it for months about different names and so on. And I was never going to comment on our players and things like that as all that was going on. But our goal in this deadline was to focus on guys that could help us in 26 and beyond, or have the chance to, whether that's through club options, like guys like Kinley and so on. And, it didn't materialize. But again, guys that have club control beyond this year, you can have conversations now and those can lead into the winter. Those can follow through. So obviously a lot of players were moved this trade deadline. In terms of us trading our players, well, tough to get specific about guys that are here and on the roster and all that. Like any trade deadline, you have tons of discussions, right? And you're talking about all kinds of players and people are inquiring about all kinds of players. So, I think sometimes there's speculation. There is speculation, and some of it's predicated on how guys are performing and things like that. But I could tell you that guys that had club control beyond this year, in terms of conversations, that was a different bar for us. And and again, I'm trying to be mindful of the fact that we still have guys on the team and the clubhouse and so on. But look, anyone that was under club control or had the ability to be under club control for next year, we'll have discussions about anybody. Just we're doing our jobs, but this is not the only time to complete trades. Just like we're trying to acquire players, so sometimes those discussions continue on into the winter. In terms of the speculation at the deadline, always comes to expiring contracts and free agents. 99% of the time, those are the guys that you see move. Montero was moved last night. Especially with the roster, and we're going to have to make a move for Carrasco and so on, and some other guys that are starting to pitch well, like guys like Dodd and so on. It made sense. And then look, the other expiring contracts on our team right now. I'm stating the obvious here. Obviously, Marcel Ozuna's got an expiring contract, but he has 10 and 5 rights, and he's got a full no trade. And we don't, as a matter of policy, give out no trade clauses, but which is great. Guys earn it. They've been great. You could accumulate 10 years of service with, in the league and 5 years with the same team, and you earn that right because you've been productive and performing. You have the right to have a full no trade. So, things like that, those are much more complicated, and the club doesn't have control in that matter. I'm not trying to insinuate anything at all, but that's not, those aren't just expiring contracts. They're not as simple. And look, obviously, Raisel Iglesias was the other expiring contract. I know his name was out there. And again, I haven't had a conversation with him, so I'm trying to be mindful and respectful of those things. But we weren't just going to give players away, move guys just to move them or just to dump salary. That happens at times at trade deadlines. We've been part of just teams wanting to save money at the deadline, and we would take on a contract. We were not in that position. That's not something we were going to do. If we were going to move any player, so I'm not speaking about Raisel or anybody, we were going to have to get something back that we liked. And look, and I'm speaking for the 26-man roster. Again, I'm stating, obviously, some guys are just not having the years that they've had in the past. So that would ultimately, goes without saying, would impact the interest level and the inquiries. So again, I'm not calling anybody out. I'm not specifying anybody. I want to be very, very clear on that. But you can give players away at any time, but I don't know that makes the organization better unless your alternative is to just save money. So that wasn't something that we were going to do. We were going to have to get something we like back. We were never, in our view, we were never put in that position leading up to 6 o'clock tonight. But with respect to controllable players, a lot of discussions that will likely continue on into the winter.
Alex, do you think you mentioned the 10 and 5 with Marcel? Do you think he understands he could be a bench player for 2 months heading into free agency?
Look, I think Marcel, the one thing about him, he's been an amazing teammate. He's gone through a lot here, right? And he, he has been a model teammate. He really has. He's gone through not playing as much, playing a ton, Snit, I've told Snit this all the time, to his credit. That April, he was struggling, which was arguably one of the worst Aprils in the history of baseball. And then he came back and hit 40 home runs in 5 months and had a 900 OPS. Snit stuck with him. So Snit has the lineup card. He always has. He plays who he wants to play. Obviously, he's managing Murph, Baldwin, and Marcel. And obviously Marcel's in the lineup today. Those are decisions that Snit makes. Murph and Baldwin got hot and they started playing. Marcel played less. And now in the last week, I guess, 4 or 5 days, Marcel's gotten a few more starts. That's Snit making those calls. So look, I think Marcel's always been a consummate pro. I think the one thing about Snit, if you look at, my 8th season with him, he's been in the role longer than that. I think this is his 10th as the manager. The one thing about Snit is he's been consistent about playing guys. So we've had players lose playing time. Jock Peterson lost playing time that year. Eddie Rosario came up and played well. Sean Murphy lost playing time. Adam Duvall lost playing time. But when they're playing well, they gain playing time. So he's been very consistent as a manager, which you love. And I think that's why players love him and they respect him. He's not looking at free agency, contracts, any of that kind of stuff. He's doing what he feels is best when he puts the lineup out. And the players know that they have a question, they can walk into his office and have that conversation. He's going to shoot him straight. His intentions and his motives are always pure. He's trying to win. He's trying to put the best. And over that period of time, he's mixed and matched lineups and played guys, whether they're guys from Gwinnett, minor league free agents, whatever. He's done what he feels right. So, with respect to Marcel, I can't answer for him. I can't, it's not a conversation I've had with him. The lineup and the playing time, that's a Snit discussion. But knowing Marcel the way I do, he's always been a pro. Even when he wasn't playing, he's been an amazing teammate, helping guys doing things. And even when he was going through his issues a few years ago, and he wasn't playing, he was an amazing teammate and he was the same guy. So I wouldn't expect that to change. That's who he is as a human being. So that's my opinion. I don't have facts. He'd probably be the guy to talk to, but Snit's been giving him some run here. So I don't know how the lineup's going to shake out the next 2 months.
Alex, did he turn down a trade?
No, we did not approach him with anything.
Thank you.
Alex, if you're pointing towards 2026, the only way Marcel's going to help you is by being an extra coach. I mean, that's kind of where I don't. If the focus is on 2026, how is Marcel helping you if you're not going to have, Drake and Murphy getting a bulk of the time at DH?
I don't know who's going to get the bulk of the time. I mean, that's Snit's call. Marcel's starting tonight, right? So again, that's not. I mean, I saw the lineup. Obviously, I'm working on trade deadline today, but he's starting tonight. So you could say that about any free agents, how they're going to help in 26, right? But I can't force a trade. So I understand that people may think we should trade so-and-so, we should get this guy back, that guy back. Unfortunately, out of respect to all parties, I can't divulge. Is there interest? Is there not interest? Is there any level of interest? What, if there is any, what is it? So I know as an industry and in sports, we can say, oh, you should trade this guy and get this and get that. Well, you need 2 parties, right? You need 2 people and you need people. So, I'm trying to stay respectful to everybody here, but without getting real specific, he's on the team. I guess what I can tell you is, trying to be as forthcoming about being respectful too to all parties, but I can't make a trade. I can't create one. So, he's a great guy. He's been a very productive player for us, but I don't know what else I can say beyond that unless I get into real specifics.
And now, Alex, you said, even though you did not present a trade for him to give the thumbs up or down or to veto or whatever, everybody obviously is aware he has 10 and 5 rights.
Yes.
So there are probably certain situations that aren't even.
Everyone knows, you look at contractual status. So look, it was written about and talked about for at least a few days. Right. I understand names are out there in the media and so on. So, And again, I don't want to focus on him. I don't think it's fair to single out a single player, but look, I think like anything else, guys, having great years, you get strong interest in those guys, right? Guys are having all-star seasons and all that kind of stuff, and you're going to have a strong interest. Guys having seasons that are not the norm for their careers and what they've done, and the interest level isn't the same. And sometimes it isn't there. So that's not being specific about anybody, but we see these guys, they've had phenomenal careers, they've played great, they're capable of so much, they've set really high bar, but guys have down seasons, off seasons, and that impacts the level of interest. And that's just common sense.
Alex, what you're saying about Marcel, I can't make a trade, I can't create one. Would that also apply to Raisel Iglesias?
No, what I guess, and I understand I'm trying to be careful with my words because I understand it's you guys can only go with what I give you. So I respect that. I understand it. What I would tell you is, I guess I would harp on the following. We, again, we're not interested in just dumping players and trying to shed some money on a contract. Again, when you look at some trade deadlines for us, we were very active in doing that, in acquiring players where, not to disparage any players, but there was financial implications were clearly a big part of, moves on the other side. And again, I want to speak for the other clubs at the time, but it was pretty obvious at the time that, hey, financially being able to save dollars and things like that were a strong part of the motivation. And look, we were fortunate enough to have, ownership and Terry McGurk that would say, go ahead and add the payroll and so on. So we were not in that position where ultimately we felt like if you look at the pros and cons, and the top line on the pros is we save some salary, that didn't make any sense for us. And that's probably as far as I can go with it.
How disappointing is it when you see how much relievers got here at this trade deadline that teams weren't interested enough in Raisel to take on some salary?
No, I didn't say that. I did not say that. I would not put those words out. No one said the line you
Okay,
just
there
said.
wasn't enough interest in him because of his performance.
I never said that. I never said anything about Raisel specifically. What I said is, what I would tell you is, we were not, I didn't talk about Raisel or anybody else. I'm trying to be respectful as Raisel, Marcel, I know those guys have been asked about. They're on our team right now. So I'm trying to be very respectful to not be specific about them because I admire them as people and as teammates, and they've done great things for us. So I don't want to even, and I'm not trying to be critical, Mark, but I can't let a comment like that slide because it's not fair to those guys. Because I didn't say that. I didn't even insinuate that. What I did say is this, not being specific about that. Generally speaking, when it comes to trades, if we thought there was a trade where we were getting some value back that we liked, we would have made a trade or two or three or four. Fortunately, that didn't present itself. Our goal in this deadline was to try to get some form of help for 26 and beyond. Obviously, that didn't materialize. The only thing I could say to try to shed a little light, generally speaking, is if we were looking at different trades and the pros and cons of a trade, not on a specific player, was let's shed some salary, and that was it. That didn't make sense for us. So that's it. It's not fair to those guys to try to pin that and pin a quote and say, he said this about this guy. I didn't say it, and it's wrong. And we talked about all kinds of, at the deadline, you ask about all kinds of players. It's an open season to have any conversation about anybody. You can talk about 26 guys on a roster. You might get quick no's, but you do. You'd be surprised the number of names people get asked about and so on. You're throwing it out there. So there's tons of discussions. So look, to your question about seeing some of these relievers, look, a lot of the relievers were having fantastic seasons, right? And again, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I didn't really, I wasn't digging in specifically because we're working on our own stuff, but guys like Helsley's, performing well, fantastic reliever. Rogers with the Giants was having a phenomenal year. Duran, phenomenal year. These guys are having phenomenal years. And yeah, you do when guys are performing at peak level and having impactful seasons, you're pushing for a playoff run, right? So you're pushing for, you want the guy having the optimal performance and do it all. It doesn't mean other bodies didn't get moved, sure. But when you talk about people who are saying, oh my God, these guys got a great return and so on, the guys they were getting back, that were either free agents or had some club control, like obviously the Miller and so on, these guys were having phenomenal seasons. They're performing really, really well. So look, the reality of it is, won't surprise anybody, that's a big part of this, right? You got 2 months playing into October. You want a guy who's hot. You want a guy who's having a great year. That drives things. When you're not, the value changes. Doesn't mean you're not capable of being the guy you were, but when you're not having the same season, obviously that impacts things, and that's fair.
Alex, you said that you're not going to make a move just to shed salary. That's I think in most cases I think that makes sense. In this case where it seems like clearly it's not going to happen this year, what would be the benefit of not making a move to shed salary?
Well, I guess I'd say this is that you are just, you could dump every single player on the team then, right? If it's not going to happen this year, should every team just, I'm not trying to be smart about this, but
Right.
there's obviously going to be several teams that don't look like they're bound for the playoffs. If that's the attitude, everyone just unload every single player and just dump them. And, you still have other guys on the roster. You still owe it to your clubhouse, your fan base again, you owe it to everybody to do the best for the organization and, position yourself. If it's not happening this year, going forward. And you look to do that. But if you don't think that that's there, you don't believe that's there, shedding salary and just gutting the team and just, I don't see why that would make sense, especially to the other players on the roster and so on. So, just not something that was ever consideration.
All right.
Do you feel like you said you wanted to improve the team for 2026, and when you went out had your discussions for the last couple of weeks, did you envision being further ahead at this point in time or doing more?
No, look, obviously, so I would say, look, you look at, obviously, when you're having seasons like this, you look at everything, of course. When we were, obviously, we scuffled for a long time, and it felt like the Mets series was going to be hopefully a turning point. Our run differential was still, I think we were right there with the Padres and close to some of the other teams. But we had a rotation that was competitive. A year ago, we led MLB in ERA, right? Everyone talked about the Mariners. We were percentage points ahead of them. So of the 30 clubs, we had the best ERA of anybody in baseball a year ago, with tons of injuries on the position player side, right? But we had tremendous health in the rotation, and we were able to win more games than we did the year we won the World Series. So we did feel like with Sale, Schwellenbach, the way Holmes was throwing the ball, Strider we thought was really starting to get going. He started out slowly. Those four felt like, okay, those four are pretty solid. If you could stabilize a little bit and get going, you're trying to do stuff earlier. I know I went on the radio and I said, trying to add now. You can add a 5-hole starter, and solidify that rotation even more. And then you can get to the deadline and solidify even more. That was the thought and that was the hope. Obviously, we're going to have to play well, but Sale, unbelievable game against the Mets, dives for that ball, freak thing, cracks 2 ribs, lose him for a long period of time. Clearly, we put him on the 60-day IL. That one's tough, and you're thinking, okay, maybe we could still keep this thing together. Then you lose Schwellenbach, and it's a lot to overcome. And just with that many starters out, right, for a long period of time, those are 2 Cy Young caliber. The way Sale was throwing, he was going to be in the Cy Young mix if he continued. Schwellenbach was easily all-star, and people were talking about him for Cy Young as well. You had losing those 2 on top of obviously Ronaldo first start in, being an all-star a year ago, Smith-Sharver, just a lot of starters. So once you lose that stability in the rotation, and look, that's the thing with all the offensive issues we had last year, and it was so much so with guys that we lost. A lot of freak things, but that rotation gives you stability. And now all of a sudden that rotation isn't the same, and your bullpen's throwing a ton of innings, right? Sale and Schwellenbach are going 6, 7 innings every time out. Now your starters are going 4, 4 2/3. Now your bullpen's covering a lot more. It just ends up snowballing on you. And, so that to me was the real turning point and look, who knows if they had stayed healthy, who knows what position we would have been in, but that was where our mindset was. We were trying to push aggressively to add. Once Sale goes down and shortly thereafter, Schwellenbach goes down, then really became very challenging to overcome because we didn't have enough bodies to cover all those innings.
Hey, Alex,
I know you.
I got a quick question about Acuna. And I know, injuries are different, but you saw all the Achilles injuries in the NBA. To kind of, Halliburton starts out with like a calf strain and he rushes it back and tries to play and unfortunately tore his Achilles. With where you guys are in the standings and, his injury proneness to the last year and a half plus, is there a thought to maybe shut him down?
No, just, so I think part of, we say Achilles and I get people live through it in the Atlanta market, Soroka, right? And I don't cover the NBA, so Halliburton is front of mind, but for baseball fans in Atlanta, Soroka comes to mind, right? So he's complaining around the Achilles area. We're mindful of the fact that Ronald Acuna is, one of the best players in the game, superstar player. People seeing him going after that ball out of the lineup. People want information. They want to know. We try to be as proactive and get that information out as fast as we can. In hindsight, do we keep everybody on pins and needles for 5 innings and wait for the game to end? But he pointed towards the Achilles area. We're looking, it's Achilles calf, but it's Achilles areas where he's pointing. We're waiting for the doctor to get him checked out and so on. After the game, when he's getting checked out, they said, look, it's more calf than anything else. It's more likely calf than anything else. And, we'll get an MRI from a procedural standpoint. Look, I understand. It's Ronald Acuna Jr. He's had injuries, like you said. People hear Achilles. I do wonder if we would have said calf, if the concern level still probably strong, but not the same. But, the player's pointing to that. We say it all the time, right? A guy comes out and says, I'm sore here. And then you look at him further, a doctor. So, look, right now, all the exams and tests, it's a grade 1. It's not serious. It's just so we think it'll be in the 2 to 3 week range. Look, there's a chance that it's shorter than that. What you don't want to do is under promise a return to play date. And now all of a sudden people start speculating there was a setback and so on, but he's already feeling so much better. So I think, it's one of those things that didn't look good on TV and he was sore and he did it when he scored from first the day before and he stepped on home. But right now, all the testing that we've done is he's already feeling better and we're optimistic. It won't be long.
If he's healthy,
the doctors aren't saying that. I mean, just to sit there and to say, you had this and we're going to shut you down for 2 months. It's just anytime someone has it's a grade 1. So
if he's healthy,
if you told me there was a week left, yeah, that'd be a consideration. But there's 2 months left. He needs to play. He needs to condition his body. At some point, he's missed so much baseball, right? When you think about it, we had the MVP season in 23, gets injured early May of 24, misses a good chunk of this season. Again, if there was a very limited amount of time, I don't know that you would rush him back or something to play for a week, but you've got 2 months left. And we'll obviously make sure he's cleared and get him checked out and so on. But look, we were so conservative with his return to play now from the ACL. We added months to what we did the first time. We added so much time. And I think that allowed him to play at such a high level when he came back. But we could have brought him back sooner even to start the year, but we just want to make sure we did it right. So we're going to be conservative. We're going to be careful. But at some point, if he's symptom free and fine, and to tell him to just, hey, sit out the next 2 months, hang out at home, I just don't think that makes any sense.
I know you mentioned the bar for players who have team control was higher, but how did the demand for relievers impact your desire to have conversations about guys like a Pierce Johnson?
We had conversations about everybody, and I'm not be specific about him, but again, like I said, at the deadline, you'd be amazed the number of names, and we're not afraid either. We'll ask for stars and this and that, and people understand. No one's getting offended. It's that time of year. It's a good time to have conversations and so on. So players that had control for 2026 or 27 or 28, obviously, you value them differently than guys that their contractual control is done in 2 months, right? So that impacts what you might ask for, what you might want back, and so on. So, but that goes for any player, right? So guy has 5 years of club control, or he makes the minimum salary. That's going to impact things. Guy has a big contract. We saw some big contracts. Guys like Carlos Correa got moved today, right? I don't want to speak for the Astros or the Twins, but I can guarantee you that the contractual implications had an impact. And that, right, he's a fantastic player, but another guy that makes the minimum, that'll impact the conversation too. So all those things are a part of it. And it's probably the best way I can give you an answer to that.
Hey, Alex, I know obviously whether you made deals or no deals right now at the trade deadline, there's a lot of work that's ahead of you. Given what you guys have gone through this year, I mean, I know it's early, there's 2 months of baseball left to be played, but just how pivotal is this winter ahead for you and your group?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you get to this position, especially when you're taking this time at the deadline, you're talking a lot about roster for next year. That's, you're not doing your job if you're not. So a lot of things, I viewed it as our offseason started now, and that's really the approach that we took. We don't, clearly what's gone on, the results and so on, we don't need to wait for November free agency to start for us to start our offseason. I mean, those conversations are starting. This was an opportunity in a window, right? Because GMs are engaged. There's no distraction of free agency. There's just, if 30 clubs can talk to each other and make trades and talk players. So we had a lot of discussions, and trade discussions and internal discussions about, what the roster can look like for next year. And again, we're 2/3 of the way through. So some of our evaluations on players could change in the next 2 months. Some of our own players, we've seen that before. Guys are performing, all of a sudden they're not. Guys get hurt. Guys that weren't performing all of a sudden finish with a flourish. That might impact things, but you're definitely taking a snapshot in time of where you're at. And we're talking about all the deficiencies and strengths, weaknesses, what we want to add. We're weighing with the pending free agent market. I mean, everyone knows right now, unless people sign extensions, who is likely to become a free agent. So we have an idea of who the pool of players will be. There were discussions to acquiring potential free agents that we might have interest in this winter, and the thought of, let's get them under our roof for 2 months. Let's get to know them a little better. It could help our chances, in signing them, right? They become a little more comfortable. They know. So we actually pursued, a few of those things. So, when I talk about a ton of conversations, I mean, it really goes that far, right? That you would think, well, this guy's about to be a free agent. Why would you acquire him? Well, if we had acquired a few of those guys, I don't think I would have announced that if I'd done a call about it. I just would have said, oh, good player. We like him. I think we'd announce to the world, hey, we're going to go try to sign this guy. But those are things we looked at as well. So when I said our offseason started in this window, in this period, it absolutely did. And obviously those conversations are going to continue.
Any other questions for Alex here?
Alex, I want to circle back to what I asked you before, and I want to make sure I understand you correctly. I was asking you about, what is the benefit of not making a trade that dumps salary? And I think what I heard you saying, like you don't want to gut the roster and do that to the guys on the roster and, give them an uncompetitive team for the final 2 months. Is that the
Yeah, I mean, look, I guess it's this. If obviously there's other clubs I've looked at I don't, I have to look at it when the dust settles with these trades, but you can look, you saw, I guess I'd say this. You've seen it happen the last few the last few years, because you can no longer make trades now after the trade deadline. In the past, they used to use a mechanism called trade waivers, and you could still make transactions and so on in the month of August, and rosters basically get frozen for postseason eligibility beginning of September. So you did see the last few years, I'm not trying to be critical, but you did see some teams, put guys on waivers and just, clear some salary and so on. And look, some teams might be looking at, let's get under CBT. Some people might say, look, let's save some money and so on. But that, and I don't know, that wasn't, I'm trying to be careful not to be critical, but I didn't see anybody throwing a celebration or party in the industry, right? I didn't see people applauding or celebrating those things. That's not be critical. Look, everyone has to run their business the way they can and things like that. There's impact on everything. But yeah, gutting the roster and just dumping players and giving them away. We still have guys that we have 162 games we're playing. We have fans that bought tickets that are showing up. Now, I think fans understand if you're getting players you believe are making the team better and so on, fans are great. But if you're just going to take players off the roster and fill them with arguably players that aren't as productive and make the product, or impact it, and you're asking other guys to go play every day and grind and push and do everything, and guys to show up and still perform and run balls out and do everything and still have pride and go perform and set an example. We have a lot of young players on our team too. I think the message that would send organizationally is just wrong, and that's what I feel. That doesn't mean if another club does that, they're wrong. Everyone has their own way to run their team and their business. So I don't see any merit to that unless, look, sometimes, like I said, 30 clubs have their own business issues and practices. If there's reasons that make sense, I'm sure teams would do that. And I understand, but from our standpoint, it wouldn't make any sense.
All right. Any last ones?
Thanks, Alex.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay.